Hello everyone, you are now watching Feminist Logic Fail number 2.
This video made me shit blood.
Hey guys, this is SuperFunnyBros, back with a new commentary. I've been slacking on making videos for a while, and I apologize. I've had real life stuff to deal with, finding a new and better job for that apartment I mentioned in the GoFundMe, working hard at my current job, spending time with family and my new baby niece, and trying to find commentary material. Well, I'm happy to say that I have. My victim for today's commentary is Libertarian Socialist Rants. If Camia Bams or Electric Unicycle Crew ring any bells, then this is the same guy. He moved away from making rant videos into doing more political videos. He's a self-identified anarcho-communist, an anti-capitalist, and is a feminist advocate. We're going to look at a response video he made to a YouTuber named NateTalksToYou about street harassment and catcalling. This video is almost 2 years old, which should be an immediate disqualification for what I commentate on, but because sexual harassment is still relevant now, it wouldn't hurt for me to talk about it. I'm going to be skipping quite a few number of times in this video, so instead of using the Spaceballs clip that I normally use for my skipping intermission, I'll use something that's quick, to the point, and also hilarious. With that said, down the warp pipe we go.
Today we're gonna check our privilege by learning about a horrible issue concerning females in the first world.
Small criticism here, Nate. I don't think that your ignorance and lack of empathy for the experiences of other people is being made clear enough. Could you try a little bit harder next time to convey that?
Well, you're not exactly a slice of humble pie either.
Forget the women in China or Yemen. No, they have petty issues, okay? They don't know what oppression is.
Okay, just because A is more oppressed than B, that doesn't mean that B is not oppressed. That's an invalid inference. Even though a pragmatic case can be made to suggest that you ought to focus on the most oppressed people first, it's usually not an either-or situation. In this case, you can focus on both, and that's evidently what feminists are doing.
I have not seen one popular feminist on the internet that has donated or created charities for supporting women in third world countries. Anita Sarkeesian? Nope. Lacey Green? Nope. Anyone in MTV or PBS Ideas? No. It seems that all they care about is women in the first world, and even then, most of the problems women are facing in the first world are non-issues. I'll elaborate more as we go along.
If you cared about women in Yemen and China, which you so obviously don't,
yeah, I'm gonna need a citation for that.
You might be aware of the Yemeni Women's Union and the All China Women's Federation. But you don't care about them, do you? You're just using them in order to derail a conversation about women in the first world.
Yeah, because being catcalled is the damn same as not being allowed to drive, forced to cover yourself up, or have to be escorted around by men all the time. Also, false dichotomy number 1. Downplaying the non-issues of feminists in the first world doesn't mean he doesn't care about feminism at all. Feminism is necessary for places like Yemen and the Middle East, but it's not necessary in the Western world because women in the first world already have the same legal rights that men do. There's even an argument that women in the first world now actually have more rights than men, such as being exempt from selective services, not having their genitals mutilated while men's genitals are during infancy so that they can't give consent, and court cases involving child custody favoring women in general, regardless if the mother is a good parent or not.
The reason it appears to you as though feminists only talk about women in the first world is that you, being someone who lives in the first world, are more likely to hear such a conversation. You're ignorant of the fact that feminists do focus on women in the third world because you live in the first world and thus are unlikely to hear such a conversation, which makes what you're saying extremely ironic.
You're going to have to provide some evidence for that claim because, again, I have not seen one popular feminist that has donated, created charities, or made a video, post, or tweet telling other people to donate to a charity helping women in the third world. The Amazing Atheist is a better feminist than most feminists on the internet, and that's saying something.
The major issue concerning first world women is guys saying things to them on the street.
By the way, there are very high levels of street harassment in Yemen as there are in the first world as well.
Okay, look at this graph. It says that 100% of women in Indianapolis and the California Bay Area have been sexually harassed. That implies that every single woman in those places has been sexually harassed, which I find to be impossible. And how do we know if the sample size of women of those areas are the same number as the women in the other places in this graph? I don't trust this graph, and neither should you.
I've been harassed by white men and black men and Latino men and Asian men.
We have right to walk on the street peacefully without being disturbed.
It absolutely speaks to a power dynamic that is askew in this society.
You know what? I totally agree that harassment is a bad thing and it should be stopped.
Call me a harsh critic, but I'm having a hard time accepting this notion that you somehow care. You're clearly not willing to do anything at all to prevent it.
Completely random question, Cammy, but is your house made of glass?
If people who have experienced this problem try to educate you about it, you make absolutely no effort whatsoever to empathize with them, but instead you take care to highlight a trivial spelling error before proceeding to trivialize and belittle their experiences as much as possible. Are these the actions of someone who cares? I'm a bit skeptical. They seem a lot more like the actions of someone who doesn't give the slightest fuck.
Hey, moron! Fucking moron! He's agreeing with you that harassment is bad. You say he's not sincere about it, yet you have no evidence to back this up. I can, however, prove that he is sincere. Look at his video calling out Sam Pepper sexually harassing women for his prank videos. Regarding the whole typo thing, it's an inevitable mistake that everyone makes from time to time, and therefore I don't give them such a hard time about it. However, you still have to point that out because when you're making a video, you need to proofread your video to make sure tiny errors like that don't happen.
However, look at what this video tries to label as harassment.
It's about the idea that women's bodies and very presence in public space is not for us.
Oh my god! He looked at her! He looked at her! Rape! Rape!
If you watch the original video, the primary topics of conversation are catcalling and groping, and not just being looked at. At no point in the video is just looking at someone categorized as a form of harassment. This is just a small piece of footage that's been used to provide visuals to complement what the person is saying. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're categorizing what happens in the footage as a form of harassment.
Little does he know that people are pushing this notion that staring at women for too long is considered harassment, contrary to the legal definition. They even want to double down saying that it's okay for a woman to stare at a man for the same period of time because of some unequal power dynamics or some stupid shit. Also, way to take a joke seriously, bruh.
Okay, unlike these people, we're gonna educate ourselves.
Yes, we are superior.
The definition of harassment is
Completely fucking arbitrary. You could have picked up any old dictionary and given us any definition of harassment. Some will be more broad and some of them will be far more precise. You've just arbitrarily decided that this particular definition of harassment from Google is somehow absolutely true and all of the other ones are false for no reason. And this is a pointless road to go down because words can basically mean whatever we want them to mean, because we made them up.
Yes, we did make these words to suit our language, but you can't just make up a definition for a word under the sun to suit your narrative. The definition that Nate used is the basic universal definition of harassment. No matter which dictionary you use, they will say essentially the same thing. The difference is one might have a more elaborate definition, or one that's slightly worded differently, but means the same thing.
How you doing, sweetie?
Now people, pay attention to where she's at. Notice the graffiti, worn out buildings and beat up cars. Notice how everyone looks pretty scruffy.
Yes, we are superior.
She's walking around in a ghetto. It's like, really, what kind of reactions do you expect from people who reside there?
Firstly, you provided no studies demonstrating that catcalling is not as common in the better parts of town, so we can just treat this as a baseless assertion.
True, there is no definitive statistic that says you're more likely to be catcalled in one type of place than another, but through other facts and statistics, we can come to the conclusion that this is the case. Firstly, as Nate pointed out, we see the woman traveling through a not-so-stellar part of town. Now, who do you think would be living there? Low-income residents who likely have little education and are likely to be criminals. There are studies that prove this. Second, non-white people are more likely to catcall than white people. As we look at the video, most of the catcallers were black. And going back to my first point, black people are more likely to live in poverty than any other race in the United States. So the next time you're a woman and you decide to walk down a low-income neighborhood, don't be surprised when a couple of people living there act like who they are because of the environment they live in.
However, I'm feeling quite nice today, so let's just be charitable and assume that both of Nate's assumptions are correct, that this is indeed a working class area, and that's why there's a lot of catcalling. If you're a working class woman who lives there and walks down those streets regularly to go about your daily routine, then Nate, who as we can clearly see is an expert on this subject, has the solution for you.
I guarantee if you were in a better part of town, you would not get reactions like that.
If you're a woman who lives there and you don't like being harassed, then just have more money, you know? Why you gotta be so poor all the time? Why you gotta hang around with all the scruffy people? What's that all about? Just climb the social ladder, silly. Speaking as a middle-class straight white male, it's easy. You'll do fine.
Here's a solution. Take a different route to work.
That was easy.
Really? Calling someone beautiful is harassment?
Do I really have to fucking spell this out for you?
I have to ask you SJWs.
I'm finding increasingly that social justice warrior, or SJW, is a term that anti-feminists use as a catch-all phrase to put anyone who disagrees with them, or anyone who cares about women, ethnic minorities, and the LGBT community, into a convenient little box. If they start calling you an SJW, you know you're doing something right.
I call them social justice warriors because they're getting triggered over non-existent issues like cultural appropriation, viewpoints that are different than theirs, and microaggressions. Let's assume that what you say is true and that we call people SJWs just to discredit them. Let's look at the other side of the fence. What words do SJWs call on people who disagree with them? Shitlord, cis scum, misogynist, transphobe, Islamophobe, mansplaining, rape apologist, racist, you get the point. They call their opponents any inflammatory word under the sun, kind of like the radical right wing. The far left you go, the closer you are to the far right. Go figure.
Where do you draw the line between catcalling and a compliment?
The same place we draw the line between sex and rape, voluntary euthanasia and murder, having dinner and being force-fed.
No, you're not going to seriously argue that. No, you can't be. No sane person would even...
I really shouldn't have to spell this out, but I'll do it for good measure. Consent.
Oh, fuck me.
Is pretty okay? Is you look good okay? Or is every compliment forbidden now?
Nate, it's not about the content of what's being said, it's about consent. Even if you say that they are the most incredibly beautiful, amazingly gorgeous goddess that you've ever seen, and that your brain feels as though it's been hit by a barrage of majestic rays of light, if you say that to a complete stranger on the street, that still qualifies as harassment, because there's no consent, the comment is totally uncalled for, and the person is likely to feel very creeped out and uncomfortable.
Oh no! A guy that I don't know and have no personal connection with made a comment about my appearance. Even though he said I was the most beautiful living thing in the universe, he didn't ask for my permission to say it. Help! Please! I'm being raped by words! In all seriousness, this has happened to literally every person in the goddamn world at least once. Even you, I bet. Here's a reality check for you. You cannot limit what other people say in public without violating someone's freedom of speech because of your personal insecurities.
Conversely, if you're into BDSM and you like to be insulted in the bedroom, so long as everybody involved consents to it, and so long as you have some kind of a signal to indicate if you no longer enjoy it, then being insulted in this scenario is not harassment. Why? Because the individuals involved have consented to it and agreed that this is what they want to do. Being insulted in a kinky scenario where everybody consents? Fine. Insulting a random stranger on the street? Not fine. Has the penny dropped yet?
No, but my IQ certainly has from watching this. Thanks.
I know the way I dress is kind of provocative, but it doesn't mean that I should have to deal with it.
Well, miss, here is a fact of life. Everyone has the right to make any kind of comment they want in a public space. I don't need your consent to make a comment like how you don't need my permission to comment on me. I'm not saying I want to insult you without consequence or be a pest. It's one thing if somebody is being a nuisance and won't leave you alone until authorities are involved, but an unexpected comment is not akin to rape. This is such a non-issue that it's really disrespectful and insulting to issues that are actually worth giving a crap about.
You remind me of those YouTube prank channels that go to the ghetto for reactions.
Come on, if you're gonna do a dramatic what the fuck face, do it right.
The point of this is to provide some documentation that gives people a rough idea of what it's like to be harassed on the street, and to serve as an example of what many women experience on a regular basis without a camera crew.
One video of a woman being catcalled on the streets cannot represent the overall experience of women in public. Every woman's experience is different. And you know what? Some women are perfectly fine with being catcalled. In fact, some like it. It's not some bullshit reason like they're internalizing sexism. No, it's because they don't get insecure about unsolicited comments, unlike some fragile, special snowflakes who want to restrict the freedoms of others for their emotional security.
The fact that you're making really superficial complaints about this particular documentation highlights your ignorance and lack of consideration for the wider problem. And it seems like there's nothing at all that will satisfy anti-feminists. If you point out that street harassment is a big problem, then they'll badger you constantly for evidence. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? And then, okay, so you get a camera, you film it, and then you go, oh, well, you must have been asking for it by virtue of the fact that you had a camera crew nearby. Like, what is it that you want?
Well, what I would want, personally, is for you and others like you to look at the bigger picture. You looked at some statistics online and took them at face value rather than taking into account other variables as to how and why these numbers are the way they are. This is exactly like the gender wage gap issue. It exists, for sure, but not in the way feminists would have you believe.
Street harassment is almost like a gateway drug to other more serious forms of violence.
Wow. Slippery slope fallacy much?
Nate, if you're going to accuse someone of using a logical fallacy, it helps to know what the fallacy actually is.
Looking at women and calling them beautiful does not mean it'll lead to rape. That's like saying,
oh, if we allow gay marriage, it'll lead to marrying animals too.
Again, slippery slope fallacy, you committed it.
To clarify, a slippery slope fallacy is a special type of conditional argument that usually goes something like this.
Teaching us about the slippery slope fallacy is all well and good, mate, but you're implying that catcalling can lead to actual harassment when you have no evidence to support that. I don't care if you think that it's a plausible scenario. Nate pointed out the fallacy correctly.
Also, for the record, fallacy hunting makes you look like a complete arsehole in this situation, especially when you do it badly.
He only pointed out one fallacy. You pointed out more fallacies than he has, and they were all garbage. So who's really the one fallacy hunting, you fucking wanker?
I can just imagine a female friend of yours, if you have any, coming around to your house and saying, look, I've had a terrible day. I've been walking a long way in miserable weather. I've been harassed on the street and I feel terrible and awful and degraded and humiliated and I just need some emotional comfort and support. And then you being like, actually, sorry, you committed a logical fallacy there, ascribing human characteristics to non-human entities. Technically, the weather can't be miserable, so I'm afraid you'll have to come up with a better argument next time, okay? Bye-bye, and then slam the door.
Oh my God, this is the most blatant use of straw man I have ever seen. You are trying so hard to demonize this person and crying that he's demonizing women when he has not shown that in the video at all. You fail at looking at opposing views with any form of maturity.
Or, if we're going to take the anti-feminist perspective of blaming the victim, as I'm sure you'd love me to do, perhaps in that situation it would be more appropriate to ask, if she doesn't like having the door slammed in her face, why would she seek emotional comfort from someone who clearly has no empathy for her situation? What kind of a reaction does she expect?
Just because someone is a victim doesn't mean we can't question them on anything and we should just take their word for it. Victim blaming is just a stupid buzzword. I would call you out on virtue signaling, but that's also a buzzword.
So now, after this, we move on to...
I was assaulted last year on the metro coming back from work. I got on the metro, and just as the doors were closing, a man came up behind me and shoved me into the car.
For some reason, Nate has decided to delete some of what she was saying, so I'll play that for you.
And the doors closed behind him, so now I was stuck in the car, couldn't move, I couldn't really turn, I couldn't see anybody.
Nate, could you please explain why you deleted that part?
And slowly, I started to feel something touching me.
Okay. What?
And that, my friends, is what we call an empathy fail. And by the way, you cut off an important detail, so here it is, just to clarify.
And slowly, I started to feel something touching me from behind. I could still feel the pressure more and more building into pushing into behind me. And I knew what it was. I just didn't want to admit I knew what it was. And at one point, I just started to panic, and I turned my body a little bit, and I could see that he had his hand in his pants.
I'm wondering if you leave this stuff out, because if it plays for too long, people will start to take it seriously.
This is the only point I kind of agree with. I believe the reason Nate cut this part out a little bit because what he had summed up the clip correctly. She was pushed into a subway train and felt something behind her that made her uncomfortable. Nate made it out like she was groped, but instead she felt something and turned to see that the guy had a hand in his pants. First of all, ew, don't do that in public, man. Second, leaving those parts out do make it contextually misleading.
How do you transition from people looking at you and calling you beautiful to groping on a subway?
I refer you to the answer I gave earlier.
I mean, yeah, groping is unacceptable, but comparing that with people looking at you is ridiculous.
I refer you to the answer I gave earlier.
You don't have to refer back to anything. If you already made a point about something, then saying stuff like this is a waste of time. Just skip the content if you're going to repeat yourself.
Okay, let's recap. According to this video, catcalling is when people look at you or call you things like gorgeous and beautiful.
I love the fact that you specify those particular terms, as if to say, oh god, these people doing the catcalling are obviously being so nice, but these women don't accept it as a compliment. How dare they? You're a piece of shit, Nate.
Women don't have to accept any comments that are given to them, but expecting not to get them is as unreasonable as someone expecting not to get a reply on a comment you posted on the internet. And you saying that people should be restricted on making comments in public makes you the piece of shit.
Well, if that's the case, I've been catcalled. A few times each week, I'll go outside for a jog, and on several occasions, girls have stared at me or said I look good. I remember on one occasion a girl yelled, "Woo!" as I went by. Am I gonna cuss her out though?
Go to hell.
No. I'll take the compliment and continue my day.
Perhaps the reason why you might not be bothered by such an experience is that it did not occur within a broader climate of sexual violence against men. As a guy, you are statistically far less likely to be a victim of sexual violence than a woman.
I'm sorry, what was it that you said in the beginning of the video?
Just because A is more oppressed than B, that doesn't mean that B is not oppressed. That's an invalid inference.
And now you're saying that just because he's a man, he doesn't have to worry about being sexually violated? Men are statistically almost as likely to be victims of sexual assault as women. Ever heard of prison rape? I'm not trying to scare anyone that sexual violence is rampant, because it's not. The rate of sexual violence in America was reduced to half the amount than it was 20 years ago. There is no rape culture, as some people would like to have you believe. If you want to see a real rape culture, look no further than the Middle East. The bottom line is sexual violence is bad no matter who the victim is, and that we shouldn't downplay any potential victims of such violence, even for Nate or Cammie.
1 in 5 women will have experienced some form of sexual violence since the age of 16. Almost everyone will know a close friend or a family member who's been through this. Try to imagine what it would be like if you were a victim of some form of sexual violence, and you were traumatized by such an awful experience. And, you go to the shops one day, you're minding your own business, you don't want any trouble at all, and then just in the background and in your peripheral vision, you begin to hear guys making comments about your body. Now in that situation, how would you feel? Unsafe, humiliated and degraded, especially knowing that these people, these total strangers, could have left you alone with absolutely no cost to themselves whatsoever.
Let me just say that for the record that I have been sexually harassed. I've had guys slap my ass out of the blue before and I felt really embarrassed. So I can see how bad it can feel for other people. But personal anecdotes aside, the men that you use in this thought experiment are simply commentating on her. While people talking about you behind your back can be a real bitch, as long as they're not making any physical advances towards you, then you shouldn't feel afraid. If you really do fear about your safety, then just stay as far away from them as possible, or just leave.
Now imagine that happening on a regular basis throughout your daily routine, so that you hear these comments again and again and again, bringing up all of these horrible feelings. Now, that's not a good thing. That's not flattering, that's a fucking nightmare.
I agree. If it does come to that point where the same people are making the comments that are making you uncomfortable on a daily basis, then you should probably go up to them and ask them nicely to stop. If they don't, then get help. The thing about people that are traumatized is you're supposed to help them overcome their trauma, not make society accommodate to their trauma.
Your idea that people should just lighten up, accept the compliment and move on isn't a solution at all. It's just not that simple, and it certainly doesn't come from a train of thought that emphasizes mutual aid and solidarity with the people who are really suffering from this. Why? Because you don't care. It's fucking obvious that you don't care. What you care about is lots of views and lots of likes. Principles? Solidarity with oppressed people? Nah.
False dichotomy number 2. He either cares about women or he cares about views and likes. It can't possibly be both. Also, yes, the solution is simple because not everyone in society is going to care about the feelings of other people. There are always going to be assholes in the world. Instead of trying to police every single person's spontaneous comments on women, we can help women not feel so weak and fragile instead of treating them like they can't take care of themselves. Occam's razor saves the day.
To conclude this video, here's a short clip from YouTuber Tara Babcock.
So going back to commenting on someone's appearance, there's 2 types of ways that you can do it. In an objectifying way and in an admiring way. Here are some examples. You are so beautiful. Obviously just admiration, right? Thank God you have nice tits or you would have no subs. That's obviously objectification, insinuating that there's nothing more to a person than their looks. Damn girl, nice titties! This one's up to interpretation, but I believe that if the person is serious and not sarcastic, he's just trying to say you have very nice breasts. Lighten up! And you gotta always understand that people are gonna see your appearance first, no matter who you are or what you're doing. People have eyes, not into your soul.
Okay, I'm not going to spend too long deconstructing what she said here, because the basic idea of what you've done here is so outrageously offensive. First of all, Tara Babcock is a professional model. She shows her appearance off for a living. That clip was not about catcalling. It was a clip of her talking about how she doesn't mind receiving comments about her appearance on her YouTube videos. Personally, I don't think that you can draw a parallel between comments on a YouTube video about a professional model and comments in the street about your average woman. These are 2 completely different scenarios. If you make a YouTube video, you're presenting content to the public for feedback. If you're walking down the street, you are not making a public presentation for feedback.
But what the internet and the real world have in common is that they're both public spaces, where people are free to speak indiscriminately to anybody. And while Tara Babcock's video isn't directly about catcalling, it's still about how she handles comments about her appearances. She gets an unquantifiable amount of comments about her appearance 24/7, yet the women in this street harassment video can't even handle some. I think they can learn a thing or two from her.
And we would also have to introduce another element into this wonderful discussion, because I know where you got that clip, Nate. Tara's full video is titled RTV number 14, Feel Free to Fap, in which, after the comments that you included, she went on to explain that she was flattered by people fapping to her YouTube videos.
So people always ask, how do you feel about tons of guys jacking off to you? My first reaction is, they are? Cool! It's pretty fucking flattering that I can get that kind of, rise out of people.
So if we accept the idea that comments on YouTube and comments in the street are easily comparable situations, which we have to if this clip that you've included is to fulfill its desired purpose, then I have to ask, Nate, how do you feel about women being the target of public masturbation? After all, 37% of 811 female respondents in a 2008 online survey said that they were. Should they feel flattered by that? Should the women on the subway take being masturbated at as a compliment?
No, because public masturbation, unlike catcalling, is against the law. I'm not arguing that everything regarding the internet should be applicable to real life. Just the fact that these are both public spheres where everyone is free to comment on anything they want.
Nate, can I just ask, what is the thought process behind this? What made you think, oh, I know what will be an appropriate response to these traumatized women talking about being sexually assaulted in public. How about this clip from a video that this professional model made about how she's flattered by people fapping to her YouTube videos? That is a good thing to do. What made you think that? Seriously, Nate, what the fuck is wrong with you? You have considerably more subscribers than I do. You have the opportunity to inspire people to get out there and join social movements that are trying to make the world a better place. But no, this fucking shit video is your contribution to the world. This is what you've given humanity. It's 5 minutes of you frantically grasping at straws, whining, and making superficial shit arguments because you seem to be frightened by the notion that women can come together and organise to improve their lives and get the respect that they deserve.
Respect is earned, not just given to people on a silver platter. And what the hell have you contributed to YouTube, Cammy? A bunch of anti-capitalism propaganda and pro-anarcho-communism propaganda. You must feel so proud of yourself, comrade. I'm not saying I'm a perfect little angel by any means, but I at least try to bring out the truth by calling people out on their bullshit.
You make me feel fucking ashamed to be male. And what's your fucking problem anyway? Is it really that hard for you to accept this very simple notion that you ought not to make unwanted sexual comments to a total fucking stranger on the street? Like, what's so awful about that? That's not even a radical idea. What is it about that you find so incredibly offensive that it would provoke you to make a video as horrendous as this one? If you care about victims of street harassment, then let me ask you something. Can you suggest one way to reduce street harassment that does not involve putting the blame on the victim? Now, in the unlikely event that you can show genuine concern about this issue, which would run contrary to everything that you've said in this video, then I may perhaps begin to have an infinitesimally small amount of respect for you. But until then, Nate, you're a fucking scumbag. Away and take a run and fuck to yourself.
Hi, I'm Anna Akana, and I'm here to help women everywhere not get raped. Because it's totally our responsibility, right?
Right. I mean, you don't want to get raped, correct? That's why it's very important you know how to stay safe. It's the same reason we're taught to wear a seatbelt while driving or lock our front door at night. Because ultimately, your safety is your responsibility. You can't expect a hero to always be there to defend you. I don't get you, Anna. You're against rape, right? Rape is what you're trying to prevent here. And yet you talk down about tactics that are shown to work. What are you smoking, Tumblr? There seems to be a growing mentality in today's world that we should believe women uncritically. Don't question, don't do research, just have blind faith. Innocent until proven guilty has become guilty until proven innocent.
So, are you ready to stop your incessant bitching, or are you going to keep demonizing people for what they are not? I guess the latter. Please just go back to Wrecking Kanan Cowger's book. I liked you so much more when you did that. And that's the end of the video. Libertarian Socialist Rants. Ignoring the fact that your YouTube channel name is a blatant oxymoron, you have failed to make a case that Nate doesn't care about women. The fact of the matter is, he does care. He just treats them as individuals with agency that don't need to be coddled all the time. While I believe that Nate's video wasn't perfect, he had the right idea. As far as the law is concerned, there is not a right that men have that women don't have. So giving them special treatment by limiting someone's freedom of speech in a public space, regardless of the contents of the speech, is unequal. Considering the large amount of videos you have that are commentary worthy, I may have to come back to you again for round 2. I try not to do the same person twice, but it may come to that. Don't make me come back for you, Cammy. And that's it for this commentary. Don't worry, the next video or commentary for that matter won't take as long. This is SuperFunnyBros, and I'll end the video with a list of all the GoFundMe contributors. See you soon.